This weekend, Weber State showed the FCS why they belong in the dance. Quarterback Stephen Cantwell threw for 3 touchdowns while Andrew Voller registered 112 receiving yards on 8 receptions. Northern Arizona wasn't as lucky, ending their campaign at home against San Diego. The Toreros took a 17-0 lead and never looked back. All the forward progress the Lumberjacks could muster was eaten up by penalties and drop balls. NAU finishes their season at 7-5. Weber will advance to Southern Utah, who they fell to right before their winning streak this season. Cantwell has been getting stronger every game and might pass the 3,000-yard mark for passing in this one. Look for Weber's kicker, Trey Tuttle, to stay consistent as he has generated 100 points for the Wildcats this season. That's the 4th most of anyone in FCS according to stats. From Southern Utah, look for running back Gennaro Green, who already has 13 rushing touchdowns for this season. For more info on the Big Sky, check out Big Sky Conf. That's CONF.com. For the FCS Conference Whiparound, I'm Anthony Crescenzo.
2 Big South teams entered the FCS playoffs, and after the first round, only one remains. Monmouth was blown out on the road at number 20 Northern Iowa, 46-7. The Hawks trailed 46-0 when Kenji Bahar finally found Lonnie Moore for a 19-yard touchdown in the 4th quarter for their only score. Just like the conference title game, turnovers were the familiar theme for the Hawks. After giving away the ball 5 times against Kennesaw, Monmouth turned it over 4 times against Northern Iowa. The Panthers held the Hawks' offense to just 202 yards on the day. Number 18 Kennesaw State won their first ever FCS playoff game by defeating number 14 Samford 28-17. The win is the Owls' 11th straight after losing to the Bulldogs on opening day. Kennesaw used a strong 2nd and 3rd quarter to pull away and sealed the victory when Akabreen Rawls picked off Devlin Hodges and returned it for a 55-yard touchdown. Chandler Burks accounted for all 3 offensive touchdowns for the Owls. He completed 5 of his 11 passes for 54 yards and 2 scores through the air, both touchdown passes going to Justin Sumter. Burks also had 72 yards and a score on the ground. The big rushing day came from Shaquille Terry, who ran for 120 yards on 8 carries. Next up for Kennesaw State, it's a date with the number 3 national seed Jacksonville State. The Gamecocks finished the regular season 10-1 and are ranked 2nd according to the Stats FCS Top 25. Jacksonville State is familiar with the Big South as they took down Liberty 31-10 back on September 23rd. The Gamecocks bring the nation's 2nd best defense against an Owls team that has the nation's 7th best offense. The big matchup, however, comes in the battle of the trenches. Jacksonville State's defense is 2nd best against the run, while Kennesaw State's the best rushing offense in the FCS. If the Owls can win the battle up front and improve on their FCS best 33 takeaways, they could be looking at the upset. That's all for this week in the Big South. For the FCS Conference Whiparound, I'm Frank LaSala.
And then there were 3. After a tough 1-point loss to Furman, Elon is heading home after a phenomenal season. With that said, we have New Hampshire, Stony Brook, and James Madison still in the hunt for the national championship. New Hampshire, after facing a ton of scrutiny, quieted the haters for at least 1 week after shutting out Central Connecticut State 14-0. Quinlan Dean led the defense with 12 tackles and an interception. He helped the Wildcats hold the Blue Devils to 248 yards. Malik Love led the offense with 10 receptions and 123 yards. New Hampshire will have to take it to another level this week as they take on 4th-seeded Central Arkansas, who's blown out just about everybody they've played this year. New Hampshire's defense needs to play with the same intensity this week against this high-octane offense. Stony Brook dominated offensively, getting a total of 622 yards, 354 rushing, in their 59-29 win over Lehigh. Donald Leontine ran for 133 yards and 2 touchdowns. Gavin Heslop helped out on the defensive side, tallying up 12 tackles. The biggest test for the Seawolves comes this weekend when they take on the undefeated James Madison Dukes in a fun division matchup. This is the first time they'll match up this season and will be both teams' toughest test. Both teams rely heavily on their run games, but are ranked 2 and 3 in rush defense in the CAA. The top 2 teams in the conference are going to put on a show. With your FCS Conference Whiparound, I'm Ryan Griffith.
After an exciting round 1 that saw Western Illinois come up just short of a spectacular comeback, South Dakota recover a goal line fumble at the end of the game to win, and Northern Iowa shred Monmouth, let's take a look at round 2 by heading to North Dakota State, where the Bison host San Diego. The Toreros decimated Northern Arizona by 30 points last week, but they will face their toughest challenge of the season as they face the Bison three-headed running attack of Dunn, Anderson, and Brooks. The key to this game will be if the Toreros quarterback Anthony Lawrence and his 33 touchdowns and 2 interceptions can keep playing mistake-free football as he has all year to keep within striking distance, which might be too much to handle in the Fargo Dome. Next, let's head to Sam Houston State, where South Dakota takes on the Bearcats. Missouri Valley Football Conference Offensive Player of the Year quarterback Chris Streveler is averaging 301 passing yards per game and adding almost 56 yards rushing, as their offense is scoring 37 points per game. Streveler is playing like the best player in the FCS. He should have his way against the Bearcats defense, who are giving up an average of 28 points per game. The key to this game will be how many stops the Yotes defense can make on the Bearcats quarterback Jeremiah Briscoe, who is averaging 354 yards passing as their offense is scoring 46 points per game. In other words, this game could come down to whoever has the ball last. And finally, in a Missouri Valley Football Conference rematch, South Dakota State hosts Northern Iowa. The Jackrabbits will be looking for some revenge as the Panthers destroyed them 38-18 earlier this year in Brookings. The Panthers outrushed them 218-52 yards and held the ball twice as long, keeping the high-flying Jackrabbits offense off the field. The Panthers will once again be counting on running back Marcus Wemiller to have another strong performance to once again keep the Jackrabbits' prolific offense off the field. The Jackrabbits are playing their best football of the season as they have won 5 straight games since their loss to Northern Iowa. Their passing attack of quarterback Christian, tight end Goddard, and wide receiver Winicky have woken up and are firing on all cylinders since their loss to the Panthers. The key to this game will be if the Jackrabbits defense can make stops and put their offense on the field. For the Missouri Valley Football Conference on Football Gameplan's FCS Whiparound, I'm Brian Sullivan.
As the only Ohio Valley Conference team left, it's up to the Jacksonville State Gamecocks to show the nation just how strong the OVC is with a win over 11-1 Kennesaw State, champions of the Big South Conference. Now it's going to be strength against strength this week as JSU's number 2 overall defense will look to stop the top rushing attack in the country for Kennesaw State. The Owls' triple option offense is led by quarterback Chandler Burks, who has rushed for 984 yards this year, thrown for 1,061, and accounted for 24 touchdowns. The Gamecocks defense, led by 2-time OVC Defensive Player of the Year Darius Jackson, and all OVC selections Jonathan Hagler, Saran Neal, and Marlon Bridges, will have to account for Burks whenever and wherever he is on the field. But it's not just the quarterback they have to worry about, as running back Shaquille Terry went for 120 yards in the win over Samford last weekend, and wide receiver Justin Sumter caught 2 touchdowns in that same game. Stopping the Owls' offense will be quite a test for the FCS's number 2 defense and a key to advancing. Now on the offensive side of the ball, Jacksonville State will rely on its own option rushing attack, led by OVC Offensive Player of the Year running back Rock Thomas. Thomas, who has rushed for just shy of 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns this season, must find room to run against a stout Kennesaw defense that only allowed 1,164 yards this year, the 12th lowest total in the FCS. And quarterback Bryant Horn, when he decides to hold on to the ball, will have to make smart decisions in the passing game, as the Kennesaw defense is extremely opportunistic, forcing the most turnovers of any team in the FCS this season. If Jacksonville State can keep the Owls' turnover plank from making an appearance on Saturday, it will go a long way in securing a victory at Burgess Snow Field. Now these teams are meeting for the first time ever, but one will be looking for revenge next November when they meet in the regular season. I think that team ends up being the Owls. Jacksonville State's defense, playing at home, is too much for the potent Owls offense. Justin Leah and the Gamecocks offensive linemen control the line of scrimmage, and JSU ekes out a low-scoring 14-10 victory. For the FCS Conference Whiparound, I'm Luke Jackson.
The postseason kicked off this past weekend in FCS, and two SoCon teams were in action, both facing off against teams they played in the regular season. Sanford won the first meeting with Kennesaw State 28-23, but history did not repeat itself, unfortunately for the Bulldogs, as the Big South champion took home the win 28-17 in the rematch. Devlin Hodges was 39 of 66 for 396 yards and a score in the loss. It was also a reversal of fortune for the Furman Paladins, but in this case was not for the better. After losing to Elon in week 2, it was the Paladins getting a little revenge, winning 28-27 with a blocked extra point being the difference in this game. In the second round, it will be an all-SoCon matchup and another rematch from the regular season, as Furman will travel to Wofford to take on the Terriers, and it's probably best not to blink during this game. This second round contest will pit two of the country's top 15 rushing offenses in FCS against each other. The question is, will Wofford win the war in the trenches again? After these two squads played to a 24-23 scoreline in week 1, with the Terriers squeaking out the victory. Kickoff will be at 2 p.m. and it's available on ESPN3. For the FCS Conference Whiparound, I'm Mike McCarthy.
This weekend was round 1 of the NCAA FCS playoffs, and the Pioneer League's lone representative certainly turned some heads. San Diego were underdogs in their opening round matchup against Northern Arizona, but the Toreros dominated the Lumberjacks on the road, winning 41-10 at the Walk-Up Sky Dome. Anthony Lawrence had a star performance, going 16 of 28 for 228 yards and 3 passing touchdowns. Emilio Martinez continued his season of consistent performances on the ground, rushing for 117 and a score. In the second round, the Toreros will face another challenge on the road and will be very familiar to those San Diego players who are on last year's roster. The foe will be number 2 seed, the North Dakota State Bison, in the Fargo Dome. These two teams met last year in the postseason, again in the second round, and while San Diego was very competitive early, the Missouri Valley Giants cruised to a 45-7 victory. But the Toreros are still confident that they can pull off this shock on Saturday. Kickoff for this game will be at 3:30 p.m. on ESPN3. For the FCS Conference Whiparound, I'm David Hashagen.
Last week, in what was the final week of the regular season in the SWAC, Alabama State handled Edward Waters with ease, winning that one 37-3. Grambling State beat Southern U in the 44th annual Bayou Classic. That score was 30-21. In the win, Grambling State capped off a perfect season in conference play, going 7-0 against SWAC opponents. Prairie View A&M beat Texas Southern 30-16. Now that the regular season is over, we shift our focus over to the SWAC championship game. This year's SWAC championship game features Alcorn State going up against Grambling State. This should be a high-scoring game, with both teams averaging over 30 points per. At the end of the day, Devontae Kincaid and the Tigers should come out of this one victorious, with a final score 28-21. The winner of the SWAC championship will face off against North Carolina A&T in the Celebration Bowl on December 16th. For the FCS Conference Whiparound, I'm Max Bazzone.
We have a quick recap of last week's game, and we have 2 games this weekend. Let's get things started with the South Dakota Coyotes as they defeated the Colonels 38-31 and advanced to the second round of the FCS playoffs. The Colonels' playoff berth didn't last long. Chris Streveler led the Coyotes to the win with his 4 touchdown passes. Moving on to Saturday as the 3-ranked Bears take on the 21-ranked Wildcats, while Jeremiah Briscoe looks to lead the 5-ranked Bearcats to a win over the 16-ranked Coyotes, which I think will be the game to watch with 2 good quarterbacks. But I think Jeremiah Briscoe will have the edge in this matchup as he has thrown 37 touchdowns compared to Streveler's 27, along with 2,000 more passing yards compared to Chris Streveler. For the FCS Whiparound, I'm Doug Saravo.